Here we go. Zentangles, the final project, part 2. Last week we started by drawing lines, called strings, to divide your paper up into sections, and you chose between a geometric or organic style. Then, you filled in each section with a different Zentangle. This week we'll be learning about color schemes. Color schemes are groups or combinations of colors that artists choose ahead of time. And by sticking to a color scheme, artwork appears unified, like everything belongs together. Artists often use the color wheel, like you see on the right, to help them choose a color scheme. Here's a video that will teach you about 3 color schemes you'll be choosing from for this project. So you'll need to go into Google Classroom and click on this video to watch. Now that you've watched the video, let's take some notes because you need to make sure that you know these 3 color schemes. So get a pencil and paper and write this down. Complementary. This was the first color scheme you learned about in the video. Here's what I want you to write down. Complementary equals opposite each other. Complementary equals opposite each other. Go ahead and pause this video if you need more time to write that down. And remember, complementary colors is a pair of colors that are directly opposite each other on the color wheel. In the example you see on the left, that would be orange and blue. They are directly across each other on the color wheel. They are complementary colors. The second color scheme you learned is analogous. Write this down. Analogous equals next to each other. And in the example on the left, here you can see analogous colors. They've chosen 3 colors that are right next to each other on the color wheel. Yellow, yellow-green, and green. But analogous colors are any 3 colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, side by side. And the last color scheme is called monochromatic. So write this down and pause if you need more time. Monochromatic equals light and dark versions of one single color. Monochromatic equals light and dark versions of one single color. In the example on the left, they've chosen one color, red, and they are showing you light and dark versions of just red. It doesn't include reddish orange. It doesn't include reddish purple. It's just red, light and dark versions of red. So let's check and see if you understand. So let's say my favorite color is green. If I know I want to start coloring with green, I need to choose a color scheme that includes green. If I decide to use a complementary color scheme that starts with green, what other colors can I use? If I'm doing a complementary color scheme and I'm starting with green, what other color can I use? I hope you answered red, because a complementary color scheme, I can only use greens and reds if I want to start with green, because red and green are opposite each other on the color wheel. That's a complementary color scheme. So I cannot use blue, I cannot use yellow. All I can use is reds and greens. But let's try something else. If I still want to use green because it's my favorite color, but now if I decide I want to use an analogous color scheme and I want to start with green, what other colors can I use? If I want an analogous color scheme starting with green, what other colors can I use? So you have some options here. For an analogous color scheme, I can only use green and the colors that are right next to it on the color wheel. So here are my options. In the example in the middle, I started with green and then I went to yellow-green and then I went to yellow. I could use those three colors. In the example on the right, I started with green and I went to a bluish green and then I went to blue. I could use those three colors. Both of those options are analogous color schemes. And lastly, you guessed it, my favorite color is still green, so I'm going to start with green. But now, what if I decide to use a monochromatic color scheme? If I'm starting with green, what other colors can I use? If I'm doing a monochromatic color scheme starting with green. Well, for a monochromatic color scheme, I can only use light and dark versions of green. That's it. No other colors, just greens. But how do I get a variety of greens if I only have 2 green colored pencils in my box? Take a look at this example here. You can vary how light or dark a color is by pressing down harder, like you see at the top, or lighter, like you see at the bottom when you color things in. So just with these 2 colors, just by varying my pressure, I now have 6 different versions of green for my monochromatic color scheme. Can you guess which color scheme I chose for my Zentangle? What colors do you see? I used yellow, I used a yellowish green, and I used green. So what color scheme is that? Did you say analogous? Awesome, you are correct. So here are your step-by-step instructions. Step 1, first of all, find the Zentangle you drew for last week's assignment. Here's a hint, be sure you photographed it and turned it in before you move on. Step 2, make a plan. Decide which color scheme you want to use. Are you going to use complementary, or analogous, or monochromatic? Make a decision. Then get out just the colors you need for that color scheme and put the rest away. And make sure you pick the correct colors for your color scheme. And step 3, neatly color in all the white spaces on your Zentangle using only the colors that belong in the color scheme you chose. And when your whole Zentangle is colored in, take a photo, attach it to the assignment, and turn it in. And remember, this is being graded on a rubric. Read this carefully. Make sure that you know what your artwork is being graded on. Now, go have fun coloring with your color scheme. Let me know if you have any questions.